Now, before getting started at creating an animated scripted character with C# and Mecanim, I want to explore an issue that sometimes happens to imported animation files that relates to the issue of root motion. Now, before I can explain what the solutions are to that problem, I need to say what root motion exactly is and how it manifests itself inside the level. So what we have here is the hierarchy panel, and you can see that the character Ethan is selected. Now, Ethan is a multi-part object. That simply means that we have an Ethan body part, Ethan glasses, Ethan skeleton, and these objects belong to the Ethan object here, which is the topmost object or the root object. Now, that means that when the root object moves in the scene, all the child objects move with it. If you take a look here in the object inspector, you will see that we have an animator component and it has an apply root motion field which is enabled to apply root motion. Now, when I enable or press play on the toolbar to start playback and I press the up key on the keyboard, the run animation plays, and in addition to that, the character is offset in world space. What is happening here is that both the run animation is applied to the character bones, but additionally the keyframes encode displacement for this root object along the Z-axis, so that as the character moves forward, that is, as I press the up key on the keyboard, the character actually displaces in world space. This world space displacement to the root object is known as root motion, and we can deactivate it simply by taking the tick out of this box, pressing play on the toolbar, and then when I press the up key, the character runs just as before, except this time his motion is not displaced in the scene. We have a character that is just running in place. I'm going to enable root motion again. Typically, you will want to enable root motion because it applies or creates the most realistic motion for characters in particular. Sometimes, if you're making fast, responsive arcade games, you may need to override the root motion and implement it yourself, in which case you will want to disable root motion. However, with root motion enabled, it means that the character is susceptible to any of the root motion encoded in the animation keyframes. This can sometimes introduce a problem, because if I select one of the animations down here, for example the humanoid walk, this encodes some additional displacement that we may not want inside our animation. For example, by selecting walk here inside the project panel, this will display the settings for the walk animation. Now, if I switch over to the animations tab and take a look at the preview inside the inspector here, if I just maximize the preview pane so that I can see the character just a little bit better. If I now press play on the toolbar, the character walks forwards as we might expect. However, I'm going to just stop this and deselect the object and then select it again to reset the preview. But this time look closely at the character's alignment to this line on the floor. When I press play, you will see that although the character is walking forwards, it is deviating from that center line, which means that the character is not in fact walking in a straight line. There is some kind of problem or offset to this character, and when we take a look at the animation settings, we've got to get an idea about what exactly this is and what is going on here. So I'm going to just stop the playback and reveal more of the animation settings. When I scroll down here inside the object inspector, you can see that for the average velocity setting, we get a local coordinate that tells us the displacement that the root motion applies to the root node. And you can see that we have indeed the character walking forwards, and so we have Z displacement. But you will see that for the X component, we also have X field displacement, which is offsetting the character along the X-axis, that is, the local X-axis, and we don't want that. To eliminate this displacement here, what you can do is move up here to the root transform rotation section, make sure that a tick is put inside bake into pose, and then for the offset setting, you can increase or decrease this setting. And the idea is that you should decrease the setting so that you can return this X component back to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase this setting here. And so what we get eventually is a 0 component, a 0 value for the X field, to completely reset that X motion for the character. I'm going to scroll down and choose Apply here from the Object Inspector. Just apply that. I'm going to deselect this object and select it again just to reset this and bring back the preview here inside the Object Inspector. But now this time, when I press play on the toolbar, you can see that the character is now walking in a straight line and never deviates from that. We could leave this playing ad infinitum and the character would still be walking in a straight line. Now, of course, this root motion problem doesn't just happen to the walk animation. We will typically want to come in to select the run animation, because in that case the character should be running forwards in a straight line, and we'll need to readjust the settings to accommodate that too. But that's how you can go ahead and correct any animation files whenever you need root motion to displace an object forwards in a straight line.